Hello and welcome to The Insider. I'm Lisa Adams. Welcome to you, our viewers, and to our listeners on the radio as well. Today, our focus is on the work that the new City of Erie Department of Planning and Neighborhood Resources has underway and how they are working to move toward a proactive, not a reactive model of code enforcement. So my guests today are Kathy Rosnick, who is Director of Planning and Neighborhood Resources, and Erin Carey, Neighborhood Planner. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for having us.
So this might not sound like a really exciting topic, and yet it really is, because we've been talking about blight in the city of Erie for a long time and what we can really do to improve our neighborhoods, beautify them, make them safer, make the city a more livable place. So the city has a real planning department now, and you have organized it with a different concept in mind. So tell us how the city was operating before and how you're approaching it now.
Well, when I first came to the city as the planning director, we were working primarily just on neighborhood strategic plans, getting a sense of really what was happening in each of our neighborhoods, working with our neighborhood organizations. And through that work, we realized that there was a tremendous focus on blight and disinvestment in our neighborhoods. So that's what led us to, and we had always wanted to, certainly Mayor Schember wanted to create a planning department that could be sustained even after, he's out of office or perhaps that I move on. Not that I'm doing that, but wanted something that was sustainable. So we reorganized and created the Planning and Neighborhood Resources Department that includes code, zoning, sustainability. So, and that was really meant to align the work that we were doing in the strategic planning, these neighborhood strategic plans, because they were directly identifying and trying to figure out how we deal with blighted properties and disinvestment in our neighborhoods. And that's really how it's come about. So we're working very, very closely with our Planning Commission, our zoning office, and code enforcement to help implement these strategic plans that we've been developing.
So talk a little bit about, just briefly, your role, Kathy, then. I mean, I think we all know there are silos in organizations, so what I'm hearing here is that each of these areas were kind of focusing on their own problem, but now you're really trying to see that as a whole?
We are. Erin and I and the team work very closely with all of our neighborhood organizations. We meet on a monthly basis with the Redevelopment Authority and all of the neighborhood groups. Under the Erie Neighborhood Growth Partnership. That's been a great resource to understand not only what's happening in each of our individual communities and our neighborhoods, but also what's the theme happening across the city that collectively we can work on together. And so we've been, everyone's in our West Bayfront or Bayfront Eastside Task Force area. Blight is blight. The blight that's occurring is very similar, but they're able to tackle it in a different way. And what we want to do is make sure that the resources of the city, including code enforcement, the resources of the land bank and the resources of the city's redevelopment authority are aligned to help with that and help them prioritize where we start, because resources are limited across the city, as we know, and so we have to prioritize where we start, and that helps us do that when we're having those conversations, meeting with them on a regular basis.
So let's jump in and ask Erin exactly what your role is as a neighborhood planner in all of this.
Yeah, so my role is taking this comprehensive plan that we have for the city, Erie Refocused, and breaking it down into these smaller bite-sized chunks, which are these neighborhood strategic plans that we're starting to write. So we take we work with our neighborhood organizations, and we collect data, we collect property condition surveys, we collect resident surveys door to door, we take census data, and we compile all of that into a strategic vision for the neighborhood. And we work alongside our organizations to build those and write those and vet all of our ideas with residents in the area. And then we take that plan back to City Hall and we say, how are we going to get this work done? And then again, we're working with the city and we're working with our neighborhood organizations and trying to carve out an implementation plan for things like blight, for things like property maintenance issues, crime and safety, economic development. All of those kind of things are wrapped into this one plan and a vision for how we can move our neighborhoods forward.
So you really want to have the people in the neighborhood have a stake and a role in what you're doing.
Right. I mean, these are the people who live here, the people who work here, the people who play here. So we want their voice and their vision for the neighborhood embedded in these plans. I mean, that's the base of of the work that we do. And we want the plans to serve the people who live and work and play in these neighborhoods.
So you both have used the word vision. I know you have this activating vision plan. So tell us, just briefly, Kathy, what are the key components of that plan?
That was an interesting process. Activating the vision is taking the goals that this community has set for itself and putting a level of transparency and understanding of how do we actually achieve those in a certain time frame. When do we know, what does success look like? Things that you've heard certainly Mayor Schember say often is we celebrate the city and we celebrate its rich cultural diversity and its excellent education for everyone. And there's five goals. What we wanted to do is say, okay, what does that even mean? And how do we know if we're succeeding? And then break that down, okay, what exactly are the steps that this city of Erie, the local government, is taking to achieve those? So we've set key performance indicators, measures of success, to specific projects and programs. So the development of this neighborhood, this new planning department, and the projects that we're undertaking now with the neighborhood strategic plans and proactive code enforcement, all of that is linked to creating welcoming and vibrant neighborhoods, which is part of activating our vision. And we have specific performance measures. We want to see a reduction in open code violations. We want to see unsound properties, which are the blighted properties that we know. We want to see that reduced. And we have a specific number that we've set ourselves to every year that we want to reduce those numbers or increase those numbers where it needs to be a more positive. We have all of that in activating our vision. It's transparency, holding ourselves accountable to do the work.
That's right. You can't tell if it's working if you don't have a way to measure it. Well, I know that you've also recently received a big grant with a plan to make code enforcement in the city up to speed technology-wise. That's something we have reported on. So we're going to talk about what that means when we come back. Stay with us. I'm Lisa Adams. Welcome back to The Insider. My guests again today are Kathy Rosnick, Director of Planning and Neighborhood Resources for the City of Erie, and Erin Carey, Neighborhood Planner. And again, our focus is planning in the City of Erie and some important changes going on there. So I know that you have received a $200,000 strategic management grant from the State Department of Community and Economic Development. So your plan with this is to buy software. So if people don't understand, well, why is that important? What's the goal of this? You really need to get code enforcement technically up to speed so they can really do something with the data that they have?
Yeah, with all the work that we've been doing with code enforcement is to help make their jobs much more efficient. We have just a few officers who work throughout the community, so we're looking at ways that we can build efficiency. We can't add time to their day, so we're looking at ways that we can make their jobs a little bit easier to do. One of those things that we do is what we're looking at with this grant is the improvement to technology. Our goal with this grant is to have a system in place that the code officer, when they're out in the field and they notice a violation or they're inspecting a property, they can, while they're out in the field, start a violation notice, start a record of what's happening, and never have to leave their vehicle to do that. So we want it from life to the solution of the issue to happen within one system. Right now, that's not how it works, and it takes a lot more time from the code enforcement officer that they're not spending out in the field trying to deal with all the different systems that don't speak to each other.
I know they got iPads for being out in the field, which was one step forward, but this certainly goes beyond it. Erin, explain why this matters. You talked about surveying each property and so on. I mean, is it possible that a code enforcement officer is out there and they're not just data in, but they can take a look and see what's already been done to notify this property owner?
Yeah, I think it's about efficiency, and if they are able to access all the information that we have readily available on a property from the field, I think that will greatly increase, their efficiency to be able to respond to more problem properties and to get more properties that need attention, the attention that they need.
So you're kind of working at the grassroots level, I understand. So how does the city go about prioritizing properties that are a real problem? I mean, we'll roll the footage here. We certainly have shown this a lot on the news as we all became more aware of neighborhoods that used to be nice, solid neighborhoods where property was kept well, that it's just not now. So how do you go about deciding which ones of these need to be tackled first?
Well, we started with Erie Refocused in 2016, did a citywide survey of the conditions of homes, and they ranked them from 1 being the best to 5 being the worst. We've actually continued doing that, updating it, and we're doing a second round of property condition survey. So we're finding the problematic properties sometimes before people have even called about them, or sometimes no one's really following them and they're not calling code enforcement and letting them know that these properties exist. So that level of data has been incredibly helpful. And then Erin takes that data and works with code enforcement. Maybe she can speak a little bit about what she does with code enforcement using that data.
Yeah, so once we have all of the information, cataloged from the survey out in the field, then we can take it back into the office and look, well, does it have any violations or citations? Has it gone to court? Does it have any other types of repair or demolish orders on it, and has it been blighted yet? So then we take all of that into account. And right now what we do is we take a look at the ones that are the worst of the worst, and the ones that are, especially the ones that are vacant, because right now they're just sitting, they're detracting, value from the neighborhood. So if those are removed, we can, improve the rest of the properties that are on that block that are, suffering.
So how does something go from just what you consider a quality of life fine or ticket to a case so bad that it does end up in district court or maybe at the Blight Review Board? And then what does the Blight Review Board do?
It really starts with properties where you have non-compliant property owners. Maybe the property owner can't be found because someone has passed away who used to own it, and the children who it's been left to don't live in the city. So it can be very, very challenging. But those are typically the most problematic properties where you do not have a responsible property owner that either you can identify or is willing or able to do anything with the property. So that's where you take it through the code enforcement officer will notify the property owner. Rarely is it owner occupied, so someone living in the property, but sometimes that does happen. But primarily it's vacant. They'll notify them, they'll issue a citation. If nothing's done with the property, that'll have to go in front of the district justice, who will fine them. And then if that continues, usually the water and electric is shut off. That will go back in front of the Blight Review Board, and they'll declare the property blighted, which opens it up for the ability for the city or the redevelopment authority to take further action on the property and potentially demolish it.
Yeah, taking control of it and potentially demolishing it. Well, obviously, nobody wants to see, although we want to eliminate blight, we don't want to just see empty spaces in the neighborhood that are also now what was a home, what was a neighborhood is gone. So I think the question is, what resources are available to help people fix their properties? And we'll talk about that when we come back. Welcome back to The Insider. We're talking with Kathy Rosnick, Director of Planning and Neighborhood Resources, and Erin Carey, Neighborhood Planner, focusing on planning in the city of Erie. So what types of initiatives or resources are available to help people with blighted properties? I know you have a brochure. Erin, you can swipe behind you there and show us this brochure. You do actually have some resources to help, because the goal isn't really to try to tear homes down, it's to try to get people to take care of them, right?
It's both. There are some properties that have just been completely abandoned or too far gone to save. So in that situation, we do understand that removal of that property is necessary. But there is certainly homeowners and property owners that are trying to do the right thing and just need some resources and assistance. So what we've done is worked with the redevelopment authority and put together the laundry list of available resources for property owners to help fix up their homes. A lot of times, though, neighborhood groups, neighborhood organizations also have access to funding to help with minor home repairs and things like that. So we certainly encourage homeowners to reach out to the neighborhood groups or the city's redevelopment authority, which has two substantial programs that might be able to help.
So we see the neighborhood organizations listed there. This is a brochure. Where do people get this brochure? Can they find it online? Do you pass it out at City Hall? How do they get it?
All of those things. So it's available on the city's website. We have it available at City Hall, although City Hall is closed right now because of COVID. Our neighborhood groups also have the pamphlets, and so does the redevelopment authority. So it's widely available, and of course anyone who needs it can hopefully find many ways to get it.
Well, we've seen the successes of the Bayfront East Side Task Force and our West Bayfront, although they have a lot more work to do. But how do you get deeper into the issues of why properties fall so far, and if people are too old or unable to make repairs? How do you address that?
It's really, the population has been declining in the city of Erie. So we have properties that there's just no demand for, and Erie Refocused really did elevate that issue. We have an oversupply and overstock of housing that is in complete disrepair and is unable to be saved, and we don't have necessarily the resources to go after all of those properties, and we don't have the demand for people wanting to live in the city. So it's the fact of it's the reality in which we live. We want to encourage people to stay in the city and to live here, so we're trying to make these neighborhoods as safe and as pleasant as possible for them to stay here.
So if you do demolish a property because it has been determined to be blighted and you can take control and take it down, then there's missing space, there's space in that neighborhood. So what are the city's plans to fill those spaces, and how soon would we see that kind of work?
And so that's where the Groundwork Trust is going to come in, that I think we're going to talk about, is how do we actually activate those vacant lots. Our neighborhood groups do an amazing job. Sometimes they turn them into community gardens, sometimes they're urban farms, or they're just mini pocket parks for the enjoyment of residents. But you can only do that so many times. So we're trying to figure out a way to actually create a system of greenways throughout our community that replaces what becomes a vacant lot. We don't want a shotgun approach that leaves hundreds of vacant lots just spread throughout the community. That doesn't do anyone any good. We're trying to create an asset in place of those properties.
So you mentioned the Groundwork Trust, and we will talk about what that's all about when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back. I'm Lisa Adams. We're talking about everything that's going on in the planning department of the City of Erie with Kathy Rosnick and Erin Carey. So this goal of getting this software enhancement for code enforcement to try to make them more efficient, how soon will we see that happening? And when do you think that'll bear fruit that the community will see or experience?
Our goal is to have that vetted and in place by the end of this year. So it will take some time. We do have a request for qualifications that's being completed now. It'll go out probably the beginning of March. We'll get proposals back, and by the end of the year, we hope to have a software in place with the proper training to utilize it.
So you talked about those properties that maybe nobody's really even living there anymore, it's vacant, or there could be squatters there, or somebody's out of town who owns it. So those are some commonalities. But are there times that people are willing to help and repair and fix things up if they only have the help? Or how do you maybe encourage them to downsize if they're older and they really can't handle the upkeep anymore?
Well, what we can do, and I think the neighborhood groups that exist, our West Bayfront Sisters of St. Joseph, Bayfront East Side Task Force, East Side Grassroots Coalition, Snoops, the list goes on, they are really the boots on the ground to help residents in neighborhoods understand what the resources are. They have resources themselves. They build relationships with homeowners, and that's really, I think, the most powerful and beneficial way for homeowners to seek out assistance. And then those, they can come back, the neighborhood groups come back to the city, and they'll talk about common issues that they're experiencing, And so having that, that voice coming from the neighborhood is so vitally important when there is a neighborhood group.
So you mentioned Groundwork Trust, a Groundwork Trust. So what's that all about?
Groundwork Trust is a concept that we've been exploring for the past year in partnership with all of our neighborhood groups. A Groundwork Trust in Erie would be a local nonprofit that works on helping to clean up areas in underserved communities through youth development and a youth workforce. Groundwork USA is a national nonprofit that is, so they would establish, we would be the 23rd trust established throughout the United States. And it would bring needed assistance from the Environmental Protection Agency and the National Park Service, which help fund Groundwork USA. So it's an exciting opportunity that we see to help offload some of the work that our neighborhood groups are having to do to deal with these vacant lots that are happening because of blight and disinvestment in the city.
So is that something you're applying to become part of this, and does that mean funding too?
Yes. So we're finalizing a business plan or a feasibility study, which is part of the requirements to become a Groundwork Trust with Groundwork USA. That should be done in the next couple of weeks. And once that's completed and accepted, then that brings 3 years worth of operational funding to get the Groundwork Trust started in Erie.
So I want to give Erin a chance to talk about a call to action here. If people are listening to this program and wondering what can they do to make a difference with these problems, what are your suggestions?
I would say start with your neighborhood organization in your area. They are really, our touch point from the city's perspective and planning perspective is, when we're going into a neighborhood, we really need a landing page, and we need residents who are already engaged and willing to be at the table and talk about the issues and the assets in their neighborhood. So I would say the best thing that you could do is contact those organizations and get involved in the ways that, where your strengths are, because that's, again, our touch point. That's where we, gather the most information about your neighborhood.
We're almost out of time, but you're a younger person, that's obvious. Do you think people your age are interested in being part of this solution and that they want to live in the city?
Yeah, I think there's definitely young people who are deeply invested in Erie and want to be here and see what Erie could become. I think Erie has so many assets and so many great things about the city, and I think young people are energetic. They just need to find the right place that they can plug in and use their own gifts.
So Kathy, again, if people want to be plugged into what's going on in the planning department, obviously in COVID, City Hall's been closed. It's been harder. We've just got a minute remaining. But what's the best way for people to stay plugged in and become aware of what you're up to? Again,
through our neighborhood groups. So during COVID, that's the best way that we try to get the information out that we're working in. Right now, we're going to be working in the Fairmont-McClellan neighborhood with our partners at Eastside Grassroots Coalition. So we're going to be working with them. The residents there will see us. We'll start prioritizing. And those are really the ways that we can get in, listen to what the issues are happening in that neighborhood, and then come up with an action plan. So we'll continue to do that and be very present in our neighborhoods over the next few years.
Well, thank you both so much for being with us, Kathy and Erin, and as always, thank you for joining us here on The Insider. If you have an idea that you'd like us to explore, just email me at ladams@erienewsnow.com. We'll see you next time.